I do think we should discuss the 76ers because given the changing landscape of the Eastern Conference, where this team was last year, there's a lot of intrigue still about this team.
Yeah, so you just called their game Sunday night in Boston. Tyrese went off. What are your thoughts with them as this team is currently constructed? We obviously can't see the future in terms of trades. As currently constructed right now, where do you see them in this East landscape?
Well, you have to assume at this point, given the intel that we have, that James Harden will eventually be moved. And if he's not moved by opening night, I'm not sure that James Harden is going to play in an NBA regular season game for the Philadelphia 76ers. So when you say as currently constructed, I'm going on the notion that it's without James Harden. I can't look at it any other way. And it's interesting, like when the DraftKings Sportsbook odds open, they open at plus 1,100 to be NBA champions. They're now plus 1,800. They're obviously going to get a return back for James Harden whenever they make that trade. You look across the Eastern Conference specifically, Boston, of course, just traded for Drew. Milwaukee just traded for Dame. Cleveland, they essentially addressed their needs in free agency, which we have discussed with Max Strus and George Niang. New York's going to be tough. They bring back basically the same crew as last year, plus DiVincenzo. There's probably some teams we were discussing earlier on the drive down here. There's probably some teams that surprise. There are probably some teams that regress. The Heat are still intriguing because they still have Jimmy Butler. They have a healthy Tyler Hero. They have a Bam, but they did lose Gabe Vincent. They lost Max Strus.
It's still the Heat, though.
It's still the Heat.
We learned this. We all learned our lesson last year. It's still the Heat.
Like we talk
doesn't
about,
matter who they roll out there. It's still the Heat.
We talk about all the time with like playoff Jimmy. What about playoff Spo? What about playoff Spo? I think that's a factor in all this. The one person that we should obviously mention, of course, besides Tyrese is Joel Embiid. And Joel won the MVP last year. And I'm paraphrasing the quote here. But essentially, the other day he said, as long as I'm on the team, we have a chance to win. And I think that largely holds true. Without putting a number on it, like Joel, cornered me into a box the time we had him on the podcast with naming the top 3 players. Joel is one of the best players in the NBA. He's one of the best players in the world. He won an MVP, won first team All NBA. He's great. And he's a player that doesn't have a championship yet. And there's 6 guys currently that have been the best player on a championship team. Could he be the 7th this year? Could Tatum be the 7th this year? I don't even know. Could Dame potentially be the 7th this year? I don't know how that dynamic with Dame and Giannis work, but Joel is there. He's there.
One Joel thing I'm interested in, we get into a lot of this with Tyrese on the offensive end of the court, but with Nick Nurse, with the hiring of Nick Nurse, and you just got a chance to talk with him on Sunday, he's a great defensive coach, one of the best defensive coaches in the league. With an anchor like Joel and with the other pieces they have on this roster right now defensively, where do you sort of see the upside of them, assuming James is not there? Where do you see this team sort of changing strategically with Nurse and basically the same roster?
I said this on First Take when Doc was let go, and we were talking about potential coaching candidates. And I said, look, it doesn't matter who the next coach is. If I'm the next coach of whoever it is, if I'm the next coach of the 76ers, my number one priority is maximizing Maxey, is figuring out how good can this guy be. And we talk about some deficiencies. We talk about some improvements with Tyrese. I think the one thing that really intrigues me is him with the ball in his hands more. And can he develop as a playmaker? Tobias, I think, seems poised for a revival year, if you will, because last year Doc asked him to sacrifice. He stood around a lot, played primarily as a spot-up shooter and as a cutter, didn't have the ball in his hands. I think the creativity, the ball movement, player movement, and a lot of the players in training camp have talked about this. That could be a difference with Nick Nurse. And I asked Nick Nurse about the defense, and one of the things on Sunday before the game, one of the things he said is like, we have to monitor Joel's workload. So what we're asking of him in the regular season in terms of being higher up in pick and roll, like we may have to do that a little bit just to prepare for the playoffs. But you also can't do that for 82 games, right? So I do think there's an element of mixing up some defensive coverage. But again, Joel in a drop coverage, you've got a top 5 defense, right? Off the jump, right? That has been proven throughout his career. One thing on Joel that I find really interesting, reigning MVP, he doesn't seem to be very popular with the voters with the bettors over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Zion Williamson and Victor Wembanyama both have more bets to win MVP than reigning MVP Joel Embiid, and he's got, as of right now, just 0.4% of the handle, which seems like a low number.
Seems like a good bet to me.
At plus 650. You go back to a lot of the narrative around MVP, and last year was I think a little bit of an anomaly because of Jokic having already won 2 in a row. Of course, everything that happened in March, Denver kind of tailing off, Joel having this historic run, and all of a sudden you have 3 guys who more than deserved it. I think a lot of in traditional years, a lot of the MVP has to do with expectations. And Philly comes into this year because of the James Harden situation with lower expectations nationally. I'm not talking about the Philly fans, and I'm certainly not talking about the guys on the team or Nick Nurse or anything like that. I'm talking about nationally. The expectations about this team, given the trades that Boston and Milwaukee make, they're lower. So if all of a sudden Joel goes out and has another dominant season where he leads the league in scoring, averages a double-double, anchors the top 5 defense, and they win 54 games, okay, he's back in the running.
Well, also, don't you think when we're talking about expectations, this situation, and it's been talked about a ton over the last month or so since it's been going on, it's a here we go again. Like, I can't believe the same shit is happening to this team again with a different person. So if he's able to buck all of that and put up a season like this, and they're able to have, whatever, 54, 58 wins, whatever it may be, don't you think just dealing with that in itself is a extenuating circumstance in his favor?
Yeah, but I also think Joel, he touched on this after he won. He's like, he recognizes like the MVP was important to him, right? But ultimately now his legacy, whatever you want to talk about, like his own career, how he compartmentalizes everything, will be based on whether or not he wins a championship. And as his friend, I don't have a vested interest in any team. I certainly root for my friends. I hope he does win one someday. I really do. He deserves it. I hope he wins one. People talk about like vertical lob threats all the time and like the necessity of that to put pressure on the back line of the defense. And I think that's important, of course, but for bigs that can not only score but make plays out of the short roll, I think that's even more valuable. And I was just, as you're talking, I'm thinking about Joel specifically because there are times where the big and the guard do a great job of drop coverage. The big is not far enough back where you have a clean, midi pull-up or a pull-up 3. The guard does a good job chasing over the top. And before you know it, you're too deep. And as a smaller guard, right, you're too deep where we're not Tatum. We can't just like
see over.
Yeah. And what Joel does, and what I think a lot of really good bigs that are good short rollers, he just gives you an angle. He gives you an angle. And so when you dump it off to him, there's a play to be made. Either he's scoring, like Jokic is awesome with this. Either he's scoring or then he's got the pass. Or like you're so deep, you can't make that skip past the corner.
Right.
But the little pocket pass on the short roll, that draws that corner man in, and then he can make the pass.
If he feels like.
Yeah.
But no, Joe.
Let's be clear. Joel is not a vertical lob threat.
Oh no,
that's not him.
You know what's funny? It was a game last year. I get downhill and he's actually like rolling hard, and I throw it up. He goes all the way up to catch it, just to bring it back down. He said, good pass. I said, why you don't want to just catch it, dunk it? But like with Joe though, it's funny because like he makes me not mad, but because he's gonna make it anyway. But I get it. I give him a great pocket pass. He catches it. He stands there.
Goes into his jab game.
And then he goes, hezzy pull. I'm like, bruh. And then I'll get this. I'm messing with him about that. But nah, he's great though. I think he's really, you know what? And he's as great as he is, like for himself scoring, he's really trying to like bought into like, okay, if I screen really good, then that'll help my teammates and myself. And if I get to like certain pockets to where I can get, James, they was great at it. Y'all saw it, the 2-man game that they developed. It was unstoppable at times. So it's like, kudos to Joel because he's really worked on that, part of the game when he could really just say, hey, look, just give me the ball every time because he's that good. You know what I mean? So he's helped me a lot.
Do you think I had Joel because he missed his first 2 years and only partial the third year? I had him his fourth and his fifth year. I think he was still young in his career.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, we mentioned his wedding this summer. He's married.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur, his son is getting older. Like in my conversations with Joe, he's grown up a lot. And I'm wondering, as a leader, like how that has manifested. Like, have you seen growth from him as a leader in the 4 years you've been with him?
I've seen lots of growth. My first year there, he didn't talk at all. COVID year, he didn't say.
Well, he was mad that year.
I know.
He was mad,
but he didn't talk. But he didn't talk at all. So like I sat it like across from him. I'll never forget this. Like we had the little Secret Santa or whatever you do for Christmas, and you know how you have to give somebody a gift, and the rookies they get their gift. And the vets can take their gift. So I got a PS5 that Joel had, he put up there, and one of the vets took my gift. And he was like, no, give it back. Give it back for Tyrese. So then the next day he comes to the plane, and Bub has a PS5, and he gave it to me. I still have that PS5. Shout out to Joel. Well, actually, I don't because my house burned down, but that's another story. But shout out to Joel for that. But he didn't talk. He just didn't talk. He never said a word. And I didn't know why. Like, I wasn't there, so I didn't know why, what was going on. But after that season, like my second year, he started talking to everybody. Like, and that's like rookies included. You know what I'm saying? And this is the MVP we're talking about here, like, or candidate back then. He's talking to rookies. He's talking to me, helping me be better. Like when he could really just be worried about himself, worried about winning games. But he's really trying to make sure, like, I remember we had Isaiah Joe back in the day. He was like big. He was on Isaiah Joe all the time about like, hey, Isaiah Joe, when you get in the game, shoot the ball. When I pass you the ball, shoot the ball. Like you're in to shoot the ball. Like Charlie Brown, we had a guy named Charlie Brown. Charlie, cut. I'm finding you on layup. Like he's been much more vocal now, and especially now with our new coach, he's bought in. You know what I'm saying? To have your best player bought in to like doing different things. Like Nick Nurse is big on like egos and all that stuff, and Joel is bought in, and he's very competitive when he does all these things. Like because you know how Joel he's competitive and everything. So it's like, man, it's great, man. His leadership now, he leads by example. And he's talking a lot more, and he's like a lot more positive. Man, it's crazy. Like I'm thinking on the outside looking in, I see Joel as the cheeseburger. Before I got there, the cheeseburger on the training table. Like, that's all I knew about Joe. But like, when I got there, I'm like, oh man, this dude he's amazing. He's a good dude. Yeah. He works hard. I'm proud of him.
No, when Joel has an incredible personality. And when he's engaged, he's just like he's a special dude.